All right, I'm just gonna, let me admit Sheila.
Okay. Hey everybody, we're going to try to use my laptop tonight for Zoom because the microphone may be better. We've been having trouble hearing me, and Patricia's got it up and going. Okay, we're getting the feedback loop, Patricia.
I'm going to turn off the sound right now.
I just did the video on feedback loop. Have y'all seen it? Have you seen the blooper?
Turn my sound all the way down off on this. Okay, so maybe any feedback. And I'm gonna take off my camera. Okay. You gonna sit over there?
No.
Oh. Okay.
I'm going to sit here.
Okay. All right, I'll turn up my sound and everything, so it'll
Okay.
just be up there.
All right, I think everything's okay Facebook-wise, and I don't see anybody here yet. Is it just us? There's your phone.
And Sheila,
Why do you keep coming back over here?
I'm just trying to get this up, or make sure this is same images I have, so I can unplug it. Fully charged. Yeah. Okay. Get out of the way. Okay.
All right, so
Okay.
hey y'all.
Hey, Bert. Hey, Sheila.
Hey, everybody.
So how I think we're using the microphone on my laptop right now instead of on Patricia's. Do I sound any better?
Lots.
Okay.
So far, yes.
I think-
What Sheila said.
I think she was insulted that I said she had a cheap microphone, but I didn't mean her in particular. I just meant they're cheap on these laptops, and
Not like she went out of her way to go buy a cheap microphone.
I know. Are we supposed to be backwards? What's the deal here? Are you backwards on your screen?
I don't know. I don't see my screen.
I mean, do you
I
see?
think I'm okay.
Do you see? Is your reflection like in the mirror, or is your reflection, or are you seeing it like you would if it was a photograph? Are-
Mirror.
I think
Yeah,
it's okay.
I'm mirrored on Zoom, and I think I didn't realize. Why am I mirrored on Zoom? Is that normal?
You're mirrored.
Mirrored.
I don't see you mirrored.
She doesn't understand. So let's just get started. Technology's not her favorite thing.
It is not.
Hey, Patricia.
Hey.
Notice, just so you'll know, mirrored means that the image is reversed. Instead of being
It's
on
like
me
backwards.
on the right and you on the
I
left.
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so they say they can hear me pretty well on this microphone.
Good. So I think that was a good idea then to switch it.
All right, and I have no way of knowing right now who's on Facebook, so I'm going to try. How do you get on Facebook, Patricia?
I can, want to just hand it to me a minute?
Hang on. Okay, I'm going to hand it to you.
Okay.
I just want to be able to check and see if we have our Facebook live streamers, because I've got it on. I think the microphone's plugged in. I hope so. Yes, Marlene's here, and Nick is here.
Okay.
Hey, Nick, how are you doing, man? I hear y'all are having some weather out there. Arkansas, North Louisiana, maybe more than down where you are in Baton Rouge. But what are you having? Sheila, are
We're
you having
a
weather?
bad here. We just had tornado warnings come through, but I think they bypassed us. And right now we've got some sunny weather, and it's all dark to the north of me. So
Okay.
I think we've made it.
Yeah. Well, Nick and Martha are all the way down in Baton Rouge, and
Well, I don't think they're anywhere near. I don't think it's near them.
I don't think so either. That's way too far south, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so we've got a few people on live stream, and looks like we're just sorry about being a little bit late getting started, everyone. Welcome, glad you're here.
The only thing is, I'm gonna need to check to see if I need to admit anyone else.
I already did that, and oh, you mean in addition to them?
If anyone else comes, so you can let them in.
Sure, I can check that.
There you go. There's someone waiting, Casey.
Bert, can you see this?
Yeah. Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. That's where it all is right now.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's nowhere near Baton Rouge.
Okay,
So
so
they're safe.
so Casey's coming on board.
It's Kia.
Hey, Kia.
Hello, Kia. Hey, welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah, so I put on Facebook as I was sharing about tonight, Patricia. I don't know if you had a chance to see it or not, but I think I put a starter question, and that was this morning, and I've forgotten what it was, but it was something along the lines of, how come the Christian afterlife is so much more difficult to grasp than all the other alternatives?
It's complicated.
Why? Why does the Christian afterlife have to be the one that's complicated?
I think mainly because of interpretation of Scripture. There's so many of them, and I think that's what's confusing. And
So you
what
think the
makes it-
Bible's confused, though? I'm not going to go with that. The
Okay.
Bible's not confused. We're
No.
confused about what it's saying.
That's what I'm saying, though. What I'm saying is the interpretation
Oh! I see what you're saying. I see what you're
of
saying.
how we interpret what's in the Scripture.
Yeah. Because a lot of people, there are a couple of verses that are misread as being the soul leaving the body, and there are only two, and Paul is consistent in all of his letters about it being resurrection of the body on the last day, but in a couple of the phrases here, just in two places, once in Philippians and I think the other one's in Romans, but don't hold me to that, but a couple of verses read out of context sound like he's saying that the soul leaves the body, but that wouldn't have occurred to him. But these are the ones that people harp on, because it's so much easier just to think about, okay, your soul leaves your body when you die. But that's what the pagan Greeks believed. That's not what Hebrew people believed. They believed in resurrection, the ones that believed in anything at all. And by the time of Jesus, resurrection was an established idea and belief based on mainly on Daniel, the book of Daniel, where it talks about living eternally with God, a new kingdom.
Yeah.
There's not a lot in the Old Testament about afterlife. Most of the idea of the Old Testament is that you live and you die and that's it. They really didn't think about afterlife as being a thing. That was more like the Egyptians back then, who totally believed in the afterlife, which is why they built all those pyramids and all those tombs, and they were getting the people ready for the afterlife. That was the point of the Giza pyramids, was we got to get the pharaoh ready for the afterlife. But yeah, so spirits leaving bodies is an ancient idea. It's resurrection that's hard to understand.
Yeah.
Because, for example, like my grandmama died back in 2007. So if she's not raised until the last day, is she just asleep until then, or what? Because people,
She's in limbo.
that's what walk with that for a minute, Gene, because there are lots of weird sort of things people have contrived to try to figure out what to do with people's souls between when they die and when Resurrection Day comes. Seventh-day
It
Adventists.
made it so complicated that we had to create limbo to explain what you explained in your sermon Sunday morning.
Yeah, and purgatory.
Purgatory, yes.
Purgatory, yes.
And for I believe for the Seventh-day Adventists, or is it Jehovah's Witnesses that believe in soul sleep?
Yeah, and only 144,000 are getting in.
Yeah,
anyway,
we'll be
so-
going to heaven, yes.
Yeah, only 144,000 people. So if you can't fit into the hedges over in Athens at the football field,
That's it.
that's it.
You're done.
100,000. So my question is, it's easy to understand annihilationism. That means you just don't exist anymore in any form, shape, or way as a person. When you die, it's easy to understand pretty much your spirit leaving your body and going wherever, to a spiritual world of some kind. It's easy to understand the idea of reincarnation, because when you die, you're reborn as a different baby somewhere, probably, or as an animal. I don't know that part.
Bird.
There are details, yeah, as a bird. There are details in that are complicated, but the idea is fairly simple. You're just reincarnated. These ideas are simple, but resurrection makes you rethink time, and people can't think like Einstein described time. And it's been 100 years and people still can't do it, and it's hard.
I think it's a good point. Sheila had a question.
Go,
on
Sheila.
comment.
Some believe that, like, the righteous that die, and I'm assuming that's us Christians, that we go to Abraham's bosom.
Have you heard that before, y'all?
Yes.
Okay, that's from a parable. Are you aware that that's from a parable?
I believe that that's what it is. Yeah. We were talking about it today in Bible study with Pastor Lane.
Okay.
That's why I brought it up, because you're kind of talking about the same thing.
Yeah, so in Jesus' parable, the rich man Lazarus,
Yes.
and
Right.
or is it the rich man and the poor man Lazarus?
Rich man, poor man, Lazarus.
Yeah. So it's a great parable, and everything in it is funny and contradictory, but people literalize it and they futurize it. Gene is nodding. Gene, help me out here. Don't make me explain all this.
I have thought about Patricia's comment so much this week of so many of our hymns that have influenced our faith, which goes back to one of your original questions. Why do we believe that? Why do Christians make it so complicated? And I don't know which came first, the hymnody that teaches us theology, or is it based on what we believe because of all the different interpretations, all the different dogmas, all the different religious flavors, persuasions, you name it. And by the way, Patricia, I even gave you a shout out on Good Friday when we sang one of the great hymns of the faith, "How Great Thou Art." And, but I mean, you think about it. When we all get to heaven,
What a day of rejoicing.
what are we waiting for? We're already there.
Yeah,
And
and
the roll is called up yonder.
Yeah.
Future.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's already been called.
Yeah.
And when we talk about someone who's passed, we do so with affection, saying, "I just know they're smiling down." And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, but in the resurrection, that is, we are all together in whatever time frame you want to name. We're all in the file cabinet. No matter, we're in all the drawers. So there's a connection that transcends time. And we have a hard time seeing it in terms, because we're waiting to see our loved ones here. We assume that we're not already with them in the resurrection, and that's a hard thing to grasp. Gene and I have a mutual friend who's very, very sharp, and I had been sharing this idea with him and showing it him in the scriptures for 2 years. This was back in the 2000s, and it had been exactly 2 years since I'd first shared the ideas with him in some of my writing. And on one afternoon, we were sitting out on the deck, and he went, "Oh!" Like it just hit him all of a sudden. "Oh, I see what you're saying now." But it's very hard to, once you get it, you've got it. Have y'all ever seen those those crazy posters where you have to kind of screw your eyes up to see the image, but you can't see it looks squirrely without it. Well, understanding time and the way that Einstein understood it is so non-intuitive. You don't realize you have to unfocus your eyes a little bit to be able to see it clearly, because time is a bizarre thing. We can only think of it linearly, and I've done my best to try to explain it. I think people at Owl Rock are understanding it, and I hope that even if they don't understand it, that they're seeing that there's a way to look at this beyond just having to sit around and wait. Grandma's having to wait on us up in heaven, and we're waiting to get there, and it's a place that we go. And the bosom of Abraham, back to your question, is a metaphor for being close to the family of God.
Okay.
That is to be resting with Abraham, to be at rest forever, human with Abraham. But I also need for you to go back and look at that at some point and realize that Jesus told a parable, and these preachers futurize it. And I want to tell you why they do it for one reason for sure. There is so little in the New Testament about the afterlife that they have to go fishing for everything they can. There's very little about the afterlife in Jesus' teachings, and they fish for anything they can find in the Gospels that he talked about. And so, they think, that might not be a parable, you see. Let's just go ahead and... Jesus is telling them a story about a real person that he knows who died, and Abraham was on one side of a canyon, and he was on the other side of a canyon, and one side of the canyon was on fire, and the other one wasn't, and they're talking to one another across this canyon through the blaze. It's a playful story that's, if you literalize it, it's just dumb. It's a parable.
Like so many parables.
They aren't made to make logical sense. For example, if your hand causes you to stumble, by the way, how do hands make you stumble? But if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. Well, shouldn't we have a lot of one-armed Christians walking around? So let's not literalize parables.
Yeah.
If your eye causes you to sin, pluck out your eye. Well, I haven't seen a lot of one-eyed people.
Well, I don't know.
But so we literalize what we want to, and the others we leave because it might impact us that way. So I don't want to walk around with one hand. So I will put my own interpretation and said, well, that was referring to me literally, but this might be bosom of Abraham.
Bosom of Abraham
example.
too.
Yeah.
Now, in the plucking out of the eye thing, remember he said, if your eye offends, pluck it out, for it's better for you to go through life without an eye than it is to be thrown into Gehenna. Now, everybody says, oh, see, you'll go to hell if you sin. Well, Gehenna is the burning dump in Jerusalem where they throw garbage.
The same thing with the eye of a needle.
So if we're not going to literalize plucking out eyes, why are we literalizing the garbage dump in Jerusalem?
Yeah.
Into an afterlife.
Yeah.
Because Gehenna's the place those other people are going. I'm not going.
Those sinful people.
I've been there. I don't want to go back.
We joke around and say, and I've said this to my friends, you're going to hell if only for one day. But it's like the same thing we're talking about. It's not literally in terms of the joke, saying that you're going to go to a bad place and burn because of what you said or what you did. So because of that embedded, it's really hard to undo what we've learned over the years. I mean, it's really, really hard. I mean,
Yes.
as you talked about the time on Sunday in your message, and when you talked about the three drawers, that we are all in the three drawers at one time, past, present, and future, I got that concept. That was really helpful.
That was the first time that you saw it clearer?
To image, because I know remember.
It came to me when I was preaching. I thought of the filing cabinet because I thought, okay, the bottom file in the cabinet is the past. The middle drawer in the filing cabinet is the present. The top drawer is the future. And we can't see the past or the future, but both of them are in the filing cabinet, meaning that all past, present, and future events are in the universe. And then I just realized that, okay, wait a minute. If I just say it, we're in all three drawers. That's why Jesus would not let us talk about the kingdom of heaven as future or past, but as present, because the kingdom of heaven is present to all of those things, because the filing cabinet is the universe within the kingdom of heaven. It encompasses it all, past, present, and future. That's why Einstein's brilliant idea, realization, was that space-time is not two different things. It's one thing. So if there's all the spaces in the universe, we know that there's an everywhere. We see stars, we see the moon. We can think about there being lots and lots of places in the universe, but there are also lots and lots of times in the universe. Because space-time's one. No, you're not. Mm-hmm. You're thinking of the next thing to say, and this is important. Space-time's one thing. If you have every place in the universe that exists, you must have every time in the universe that exists, because they're one thing. Space-time.
I hear you.
Yeah, I know, but the filing cabinet's easier to imagine.
My point is, I've always struggled with chronology in that sense, with Einstein's theory. So if you don't get that, I think this will be harder for you to grasp.
It is hard to grasp, and that's why I'm frustrated, because it would seem like that if the good Lord had been thinking this through, really thinking this through, that the Christian afterlife would be the easiest one to understand. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's the hardest, because it requires us to let go of the watch, the chronometer, and our very sort of terrestrial understanding of the universe we live in. And I just think that Jesus' insistence on using present tense for the kingdom is crazy important. Whose wife will she be? Who will be her husband in the afterlife? And Jesus says, in the kingdom there is. In the resurrection there are. Paul did the same thing. And that's not a coincidence, because it exists. It's an is thing. It's an are thing. Just like God's name is an is thing. I am. It's present tense.
Yeah. I am that I am.
Through the filter of the present comes everything, it seems to me, for Christian theology. It's not rooted in the past in terms of experience. It's rooted in a present that expands and includes everything. Mm-hmm. An eternal now, if that makes sense. A forever, sort of a infinity in the present. Infinity in the present. Mm-hmm. Everything. It's hard to grasp. Somebody get in here and rescue me. I'm going to shut up for a minute.
One of my first exposures was a sermon when I was in college on staff at a church in Mobile, Alabama, and the pastor preached a sermon on a God's eye view of time.
Say it again.
A God's eye view of time.
Yes, sir.
His image was that God was so far removed from the moment, like, you're not so far into the picture, you can't see outside the frame. Your image of the movie picture, God already knows the movie, the story, the plot line, how it ends in the middle, because God already sees it and is in that moment.
Yes.
We're stuck in the frame.
We're stuck in a frame.
Or we're stuck in the scene if we're lucky.
Yeah.
But we have no clue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
and those of us who've been exposed to Star Trek, Next Generation, or otherwise, we've seen space-time continuums and all that stuff, and I think that helps, even if it doesn't completely encompass what you're going for.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know if you were part of this conversation or not, Gene, but you just triggered a memory for me. We were talking about how maybe it was over at Sessions' place one day, and or maybe it was with Carrie and them over. I can't remember where, but we were dealing with the concept of, well, if God knows the ending of the movie, wouldn't it be kind of boring for God just to? I mean, I used the example of a movie. I think it was Apollo 13. Apollo 13. Ron Howard wanted to do the story. 13. How Apollo 13 barely made it back, and he pitched the idea to the movie theaters, to the movie industry, and the execs were all like, yeah, but everybody knows they got back. And Ron Howard's answer to that was, yeah, but we're going to give them a hell of a ride. And so could it be that I mean, I'm using that as a parallel to the idea that God may know the ending of the movie, but God is intimately involved in our ride and is excited to be participating in the present with us, whatever present we're in, and caring about every moment of that ride, and how God does that for billions and billions of people who exist now, and all the people who ever existed, and all the people who will exist as we understand it from our but we're locked in a frame, Gene, and God is not. It's tough to remember that. And here's another thing, Gene, and we're not locked in it either from the perspective of the resurrection. Where do you think Moses and Elijah came from, if indeed the story is true that they came to visit Jesus in the year 3033 AD? Where you can't just think about where they came from, okay? You're thinking about when they came from.
They stepped back into that time.
That's one way. Yeah, it's easier to think about it that way, that they stepped back in time from our future. It's more than that, but it's at least that. The idea that they're visiting from some when else more than somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's really important, because the only way that you can begin to grasp resurrection in the New Testament is to understand time in a more Einsteinian way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really funny. I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think I am.
Well, and so many folks that are going to be fundamentalistic in nature about resurrection, hereafter, heaven and hell, and all that stuff are going to reject Einstein just because
it's science.
He's not Christian and he was almost atheistic, or
well,
agnostic. So
he was a Catholic at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Jewish, Catholic, and agnostic at one point.
So going on to perfection, or how does that work?
I don't know what he's doing. I think maybe he just took a wrong turn at Albuquerque. I don't know.
There's some comments on Facebook.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm checking Facebook. Ruby's here. Michael's here. Michael said we both look frustrated. And greetings from Gene Martino. Thank you, Gene. Yeah, it is. I think I am frustrated, Michael. Sometimes my feelings are at the fore when it comes to this subject, because when I would try to teach it in churches in the past and I failed to get the concept across, I would get those calls. Have you ever gotten those calls where someone says, well, you know what it really says in the Bible, and I think that it's wrong for you to be misleading people. And you get one of those calls and you're like, no, that's not what I said. No, that's not what I mean. Well, what did you mean? And then I explain it and they don't understand and they assume that something's wrong with me. And maybe there is. But the thing is that the Christian afterlife is hard to describe. I wish it were as simple as annihilationism and the immortality of the soul. Those are easy. If you want to have immortality of the soul and you want grandma's soul to leave her body and be up there with grandpa and having a good old time, and when you die you get to meet him again, if that's your concept of the afterlife, I don't have a problem with that, but don't tell me it's in the Bible.
Yeah. Gene, how did you get it? How did you get this concept? Did you always know this growing up, or was it a change for you?
No.
What helped you?
Yeah, it was a small membership, very traditional church. To be honest, not a lot of gifted pastors. I can only remember one of note all my growing up years who really had any kind of teaching ability or skills to do that with, much less preach. But I was in college and heard this preacher who was a Duke graduate, don't hold that against him, preaching, and when that was one of the first times that I felt like somebody peeled the top off my head and let the light in. Wow. And it was like, I'd always wondered about things or asked questions, and it's like, okay, you're going to give me this bad answer. If God created everything, who created God? Well, God always is. Well, that's fine. That's a lame ass answer. And it was the first time that somebody literally just opened up my brain and said, there's all kind of other possibilities. Would you consider this? Yeah. It was like, oh, kind of like, it didn't take me 2 years at the moment.
Yeah. That aha moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sitting down at this pastor's house for lunch a week or so later, said, when you said thus and so, did you mean, well, let's talk about that. let's, because I've never talked about that with anybody.
Okay. I think that's the best way it happens too. I unlearned a lot of things that I had learned by sitting down and doing one-on-one with Bert. I mean, we spent a lot of time on my balcony. I mean, just going through the scriptures and the word. And what was helpful was it didn't turn into argument. You know, it's easy to argue the scriptures because, oh, no, you don't know what John said, this and that. And you know, but listening and really trying to grasp the concepts. I mean, it was really helpful. And Bert was really good about that. With helping me and just being a good listener and answering questions and going to the scriptures. I mean, I still struggle with some things, but it's been really helpful over the years to have to do that.
One of the things that we do with horses when we're training new people and new critters is we video. We video stuff, and then we go back afterwards, and we usually watch it the first time with no comment. And then the second time, we'll always ask the question of the student or each other, what did you see? Well, I thought I was doing this. Well, obviously you weren't. Your heels were up, not down. Your legs are bowed out, not against the horse's side. You're telling the horse to go with your feet. You're pulling back on the reins. What do you think the horse is going to do? It's going to probably buck you off. So at a certain point when we approach the scripture, we all come to it. With who we are and what we've learned and preconceived notions. At a certain point, we've got to take a step back, almost moving toward that God's eye view, and say, well, wait a minute, it doesn't call it the Garden of Gethsemane, it's just Gethsemane. It doesn't say it was Sunday when Jesus entered Jerusalem. Why do we call it Palm Sunday? And you have to really get dispassionate at times so that you can get passionate and correct later.
Yeah. Michael said something about passion. I think your frustration is due to your passion.
Oh, yeah. Michael France says, I think your frustration is due to your passion, and that's a good thing. Well, I agree. I agree, Mike. You know, I tell you, Gene's aha moment was there. I remember my aha moment. I was researching to write Heaven for Skeptics, and I was reading books on cosmology, and I was reading several books, two by Brian Greene, and in one of those books by Brian Greene, he was describing relativity, and I was learning to grasp it, and he was describing how if you were on one side of the universe and an alien on the other side of the universe was sharing your now moment, but you walked toward them, they would move hundreds of years into your past. If you walked away from them, they would move 100 years into your future, just by walking toward them or away from them across the room. Because the expanse of our universe is so great, and when you move, time changes for you. So the now changes just a tiny bit, but when you talk about a now shifting all the way across the vast expanse of the universe, you're talking about shifts on the other side for just walking across the room by hundreds and hundreds of years. And then I realized then the future has to exist. If every time I move, my now shifts that far on the other side of the universe, the future's got to be there for it to shift to. And I went, oh, how can I explain this to people? And then I just went insane and decided I probably went and decided to, I don't know, jump off a cliff. But it's very difficult to explain. Once I saw it, I thought, how can I explain this? And I thought that the drawer came kind of close. I thought the three drawers, helping people just to see past, present, and future as a piece, and we're in all three drawers. You know, Brian Greene uses the idea of the giant space loaf of bread. You know, slices. Yeah, and then other people have used the movie film. Now that it's digital, that doesn't work so much anymore. But you know, the old-fashioned reels that you would put films on that Gene was talking about, where you have individual frames. Yeah. And just because you don't know what the next frame is, doesn't mean, or the future, or any future frames are from that one frame, doesn't mean that they aren't on the spool ready to roll. Yeah, true. So the idea is the future's there. We can't see it from here. God can, and so can resurrected people. And guess what? We're on the future reel too. From there we know. From here we don't. Does that Blow anybody's mind or not?
Blows mine.
Sheila, you look like you're in really
in some
deep
ways,
thought.
Bert, it's the same conversation when we begin to discuss the Trinity.
When we were what?
When we begin to discuss the Trinity.
Right, because of the oneness of three, how can 1 + 1 + 1 = 1? Yeah. Yeah, it is mind-blowing. But
Yeah, and that comes up. That I think that's the lectionary the last Sunday in May, but I get ahead of myself sometimes.
I don't know if
I
don't know if it helps, but I mean, for me, my memories are precious, but my memories are not the past. They are photographs in my mind of the past. But the actual past, the real past, is every bit as real in this universe as the moment we're in right now. It did not go away. I'm still 6 years old falling off my bike. I'm still 13 years old falling on my head. I'm still 17 years old running up and down the beach with my brother. I'm still 20-something years old and getting married. All of the past things that I remember as memories are not the past. They're photographs of the past. The actual past is still there. Mm-hmm. It's in this universe. The bottom drawer is in this universe. The top drawer is in this universe. We just can't see it from here. We can't see the past or the future from here. The only difference between the past and the future for us is we remember the past to some degree, but we don't remember the future.
Hi,
That's
Elaine.
the big difference.
Elaine joined us.
Hey, Elaine.
Whew, this is some deep stuff. It's can be mind-boggling. I mean, to be honest, I think you started it right about why is this so hard. And
it is
difficult.
hard. It's extremely hard, and it just seems unfair to me sometimes. I wish it were easy. If it were. The way it's described sometimes, it's this easy. If I'm a good person, okay, then I get to go to heaven when I die as a spirit. And if I'm a bad person, I'm going to be sent to hell below to be tortured forever when I die. That's simple.
Yeah.
I wish it were in the Bible, though. I mean, I'm glad it's not, actually. But, I mean, if it would make things easier.
Yeah, but, I mean, can you imagine, though, living your life or not living, trying to get to one place other than the other, and doing everything in your power not to go to hell and to go to heaven, meaning, I mean, you lose out on a lot of, you don't live. I mean, well, you live to some degree, but it's like, is it real or is it only for the prize, so to speak? Like some people will just join a competition just for the prize, and are they really interested in the process or what it's all about? I just want the $1,000, so I'm going to join anyway.
Yeah.
Or it's
well,
like,
in the first grade, if you well behave one day, you get a star for this, and if you make an A on your spelling test, then you get an A for that. If you try a star, keeps putting more stars up, and so it's about earning your stars, and then you get well. That's. Anybody who has any theological sophistication at all knows that that's works righteousness and it's legalism, and it and there's no room in it for grace at all.
Yeah.
Which means that Jesus died for nothing.
Yeah.
If we could fix, if we wouldn't need him if that were true. If it were true that we could work our way into God's good graces, then we wouldn't need Jesus at all, and he died for nothing. Which is exactly what Paul said. If you look it up, he used that phrase. Then Christ has died for nothing. Yeah.
I had a church one time that had a really unusual situation in that they had a cemetery, and everyone who was a member of the church got a free burial plot.
Had a what?
Free burial plot.
Yeah, free burial plot. So your eternal rest, was already set. It impacted their theology, their practical polity, everything. And then one day I did the math about the 1,000 members we had and how much room they would take up, and realized we don't have enough room in the cemetery for all of them, much less anybody else. So we spun off a nonprofit corporation, deeded the property to the cemetery to the nonprofit, and sent a letter out to all the members saying, thus saith the Lord, that agreement is null and void. If you want to get a burial plot, you need to contact the Cemetery Association. And I think I got an award at annual conference for taking more people off of the rolls of a church in 1 year than anybody else in the history of the conference.
Oh my God.
So if there was a negative evangelism award, I won it.
I know. And I think you're onto something, Gene. You're onto something because the cemeteries keep coming up with these churches. We have a mutual friend who got his PhD in sociology studying rural churches, and he discovered he did a lot of surveys of rural churches and asked them, what's the number one reason for your church's existence? And the number one answer was to upkeep the cemetery. And so taking care of the
city of the dead.
Yeah, that's the city. The God of the dead. The God of the dead. Just like in the sermon on Sunday, God is not the God of the dead. God is the God of the living. But in these churches, it was God of the dead.
Wait.
And
Out of the chapel. Yeah.
yeah, now I've got another one for you. And the woodmen of the world too. Back at the turn of the century, you may remember, they included like a free monument for you when you did your insurance with them, and those were extremely popular, especially amongst the racist organizations of the day. And it's like if you go to these cemeteries in Atlanta, you can see woodmen, you can see KKK, you can see all kinds of strange symbols on these
John Birch.
I mean, just moose, elk. They were all white organizations at the time, and all men except for one. And there's something about this death, this obsession with death, that connects to legalism, that connects us to our belief that our afterlife is really in our hands.
Yeah.
And that
and I
is
want
the
it to
height.
look just like the best part of this life.
Yeah.
That's the height of hubris. I mean, nothing could be more prideful. And there's no room for Jesus or grace or anything in that picture.
No.
But that may be the dominant theology. I don't know about in America, but maybe in the South. I don't know. Did anybody have an idea on that? God is the God of the dead. We're all terrified that God, who by the way, God's default setting for you is torture. That's what your God does, and it planned to do that to you from the minute you were born. What kind of God is that?
I know. Yeah.
And you've got to talk him out of it.
Yep.
And you might have luck with Jesus, because if he's in a good mood, he might try to save you from the Father. That's what salvation is in evangelical theology. It's salvation from God. Now, how messed up is that?
Pray the right prayer.
Yeah.
Say the right words. Give the right offering to the church.
Well, that's magic. That's spells. That's incantations.
Yeah.
I do the magic words, and God won't zap me.
Abracadabra.
Now, the reason that we're laughing is because it's true. We're surrounded by people who believe that, whether consciously or unconsciously, and even if they know it's probably rationally not true, they still have a hard time shaking that.
The first time I heard you say that, Bert, I'm like, what in the world? Where did he get this nonsense? What kind of theology is this?
I was describing the theology you were raised in.
I understand. I get it.
You just didn't know there was an alternative.
Here on Sunday morning.
No, but when
She was swimming in it. The fish don't know they're in water.
When I heard that,
What's water?
Like, I'm fighting
You
my
know,
way out.
I was brought up Catholic when I was young. And I can still remember my daddy telling me that if I didn't go to church on Sunday and I didn't do what was right, God would come down and snatch me bald-headed. And I believed that so much through my life. Bless your heart, Bert. I'm just saying.
God did it to me. Oh my God. I've been trying to live right since God snatched me bald-headed.
I think I have.
I'm just thinking now.
Oh, Lord.
But I mean, I'm just saying, we believe these things.
Yes, we do.
That it's really going to happen. And I didn't go to church after a while for such a long time. And then when I came to Spring City is when I started with the United Methodist Church. And I was scared to death to walk in it. I was scared to death to walk in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reason.
You know, it was just all these little things that you're brought up with and you believe, you know.
Yes.
It's
I really.
crazy, really.
And fright. I mean, there's a lot of fear that comes with that theology. I mean, I'm scared to death. It's like, okay, I did something wrong. Let me just pray before I go and walk into the church. Or I'm not going to go to bed until I ask God, please forgive me for all my sins. Because if you come in the middle of the night, I want to go with you. I don't want to get left. So you pray that prayer and make sure your heart is right.
There's a quote by Palmer that you would love, and I haven't got it exactly, but this is sort of it in my head, that religion has made half of us afraid to die and the other half afraid to live.
Wow.
And that's when I was growing up and I began to get exposed to the theologies in my own culture. I knew there was something wrong, and it infuriated me and it angered me, and I didn't know what it was, but I guess it was I didn't have the vocabulary to articulate what was wrong. But at the heart of it, and I've been hammering down trying to get to the heart of it, and the heart of what's wrong with evangelical theology is what it boils down to is that these people believe that God, for some reason, sent Jesus to try to stop God from torturing us, which means that they're not on the same page. God's default setting for me is torture, and the point of my getting saved is I'm getting saved from God. Why would God send Jesus to save me from God's self? When I saw that, I was like, this is crazy. But it took me about 40 years to get there. I didn't know that when I was 15. I just knew something was not right, fundamentally not right with what people were telling me.
Yeah.
It helps this though, Gene, and I hope you'll corroborate this. It helps that we have the Bible, because these people think they know the Bible.
Yeah.
And then when we point out to them what's there, they can either choose to call us heretics and stop listening, or they can listen and maybe realize that what they were told about the Bible, that they've been assuming all this time, is false information. It's inaccurate.
Yeah.
And what do those people do when in essence, they reject Scripture?
Yeah.
That they have worshipped their whole life.
But you know what I think? It's like, so what happens if you never come to the knowledge of the truth? You know, like if you were born in that and you continue in that and you die with that. You know, it's like, I think
it's a shame, but I want to remind you that the apostle Paul said that there are those who do not know God, who by instinct love with the love of Christ. By instinct. You know, and we're so busy writing people off because they didn't say the sinner's prayer, and it clearly says in the scriptures, there are people loving with the love of Christ unconsciously. They don't know it, but they're doing it instinctually because it's written in everybody's hearts. It's not so much about what you say, it's about what you do and what's within you. But don't expect someone who's evangelical to have ever heard that verse before. And pointing it out to them could be a real, oh gosh, what do I do now? It's a kind of a crisis. But,
And think about it. Paul's journey, the very journey that Paul himself took was in essence from evangelical fundamentalism in Judaism.
Yes.
To the open-mindedness that it was like, oh my gosh, I've wasted all these years. I've got to make up for lost time.
Well,
and I don't want others to make the mistakes I made.
It was sort of like Nicodemus when Jesus started talking about being born of the wind, born from above, born of the Spirit, and he kept saying, how can these things be? That has nothing to do with the law. I have established law, I have established steps. And Paul was the same way. But after Paul met Jesus, interesting verse that's not often pointed out is that he spent 3 years in Arabia. I know what he was doing over there, because when he came back and was writing those letters, he reread the New Testament, the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament. He reread the Hebrew Scriptures through the eyes of Christ. And he brought it back into the world, and he took that into the Roman world. And it had to do with grace, not law.
And it's there.
It's there.
It's all through the First Testament.
Yep, it's all through the First Testament.
what's fascinating is I've got some fundamentalist people. Well, I'm not going to name names.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That were really, one of the things I heard a little while back was, why are you preaching from the Old Testament? It doesn't apply to us.
What?
Why are you reading the Psalms? What does that got to do with us? Just preach Jesus. I said, what Bible do you think he read?
I know.
What book do you think he was quoting more than anything else?
Yes.
Isaiah and Psalms. And you don't want me to use his source material?
I know.
Really?
I know. Yeah, he's all through. I mean, Isaiah, Psalm 22, that we preached about the other day. It was like, my God.
Yeah, Psalm 22 was the theme song to his crucifixion.
Exactly.
That was the movie soundtrack, man.
It's the script. The word became flesh, if you will.
Yes.
It sure did.
Needless to say, Bert, you know my reaction. I preached more Old Testament in the last year than I have probably my whole life.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll show you.
Yeah. And a lot of people are afraid of the book of Revelation for some reason. It's a really deep book, and if you don't understand it, wait
a minute. I don't want to go in that direction, but because the minute you say Revelation, people trigger. But I just want to say this: it's the same thing with the bosom of Abraham. That's a symbol. It's an image in a parable. So is everything in Revelation. John doesn't mean for you to futurize it. John does not mean you to literalize it. Because if you do, then Jesus is actually a four-legged creature with bunches of eyes and horns. And I think that would look kind of silly. So if you want to literalize the book of Revelation, then Jesus has to be a farm animal with too many eyes and too many horns. John actually says in his writing that from time to time, what the seven lampstands represent, what the seven stars represent. He says the word represent. And he also says at the beginning that it's a vision. Okay, visions are great and parables are great, but they're not newspaper fact reporting, okay? And that's what evangelicals try to turn it into.
And when folks want to know, when's it going to come true?
It already has.
The first century. You missed it, I guess.
Let's
repeat.
Yeah, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I've done my homework. I wrote a commentary on the book of Revelation. Gene knows that. And the book is about Jesus' life and death and what they accomplished. And it goes through it 7 times, repeating the same story 7 times using different pictures. And everybody wants to see atom bombs and tanks and Russia, and I'm like,
every petty despot for 2,000 years, his name is added up to the number 666, and he's the Antichrist on both sides of the aisle in the East United States. But anyway,
it couldn't have been that it was Caesar Nero. That wouldn't be right, because that was the same time frame. So it has to be somebody else. Why would John use gematria on Caesar Nero's name to come up with 666, which it does? Why would he do that when it really should be for Hitler?
Yeah. Or Reagan.
I'm being. This is ironic, and I'm being sarcastic. But people are like, okay, which is more likely, that John was talking about Nero Caesar or talking about Saddam Hussein when he was writing in the first century?
We know he was really writing about Bill Belichick.
Is that a football coach?
Yes.
Well, it must be true then.
Very good. Very good.
Oh my God!
I didn't know Bill Belichick was the Antichrist. This is great.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Explain that to him later, Patricia.
Bill Belichick.
Lord have mercy. Christ have mercy. Lord have mercy.
I know. It's interesting. But,
well, this has been intense. Gene, let's start trying to wrap it up. Can you help me, Patricia?
Yeah, like I said, Friday night we sang On a Hill Far Away, and my tongue was in my cheek, wrapped around my iTunes so I couldn't see what I was singing. But the whole time we were doing the Tenebrae and talking about the story, I kept reminding folks, we've been walking this journey during Lent. We've explained it on Wednesday mornings and Wednesday nights. I've tried to explain it on Sunday mornings. So now if you can turn off everything you think you ever learned about Holy Week and the crucifixion, listen to the story new. And some people, I think, did.
Yeah.
And I heard it in a new way, in a fresh way. And it was no less powerful. It was more so. And when we can do that, that's where I think your passion is in the right place and your heart is in the right place. Because if we can just get people to see what we see and cut through the red tape and the dogma and the religion of all this and get down to the heart of the matter, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
To live in the kingdom now. Why do you want to wait till some future date to make your bucket list? What are you waiting for? Live it now. There is no future date that's more important than now.
Dale says, interesting conversation. He's joined us.
Hey, Dale. Good to have you, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, why would anybody, at the heart of all of this for me is, why would anybody want to worship a God who we hope Jesus can talk out of torturing us? Why would we want to worship a God from whom we're hoping Jesus will save us? Why would we worship and love a God who we're hoping Jesus will save us from? I'm trying to say this as simply and compactly as I can. How is it that we want to love and worship a God from whom we hope Jesus will save us?
We're asking Jesus to do a palace coup and overthrow God. Right? We really don't want God. We want Jesus because he's a softer take.
Yeah, and worse than that, it's ironic because God supposedly is the one who sent Jesus to overthrow him.
Yeah.
I thought Jesus said when we've seen him, we've seen the Father, and that they are one. They're on the same page. They have the same purpose. I thought that the temple of the curtain was torn in two by the Father because of the blasphemy that his son had to endure, and the pain that it caused the Father as well, sharing with him in that moment. If Jesus is crucified, then the Father is crucified, then the Spirit is crucified. They sharing together in that moment. There was no abandonment. If that's true, then how come we have to get Jesus to save us from God? What did he come for? He came to show us who God was, and we're not listening.
Yeah.
We've got enough heresies. We don't need that one.
What about it, Gene? Anything else, Sheila?
Lord.
Anybody else? How about over here? Y'all type something. Type something over here if you want to. Dale Wire typed, interesting conversation. Dale, is that what you say when you don't want to say anything bad?
Oh, you don't believe. And it's
Bless his
okay.
heart.
Well, turtle me this.
Bless his heart.
Well,
Oh, Lord.
remember what anybody who's listening right now as we close, remember what I said earlier, that I have a very close friend, that Gene and I have a very close friend. And I remember the day as clear as I can. He and I were in weekly meetings together. He and I are close friends, Gene close friends, meetings all the time where we talked about this kind of thing. And I'd been describing it, and they'd been reading the stuff that I'd written. And it was 2 years almost to the day that he went, oh, so if it's not ringing a bell right now, but it's tickling you a little bit, it's okay. That's where you are. You know, you can't pretend this stuff. And by the way, you don't have to understand this to quote unquote be saved. This is just a matter of coming to a place where you can understand it in a new way that's not easy. It's like trying to understand Einstein when you can't do the math. It's very hard to visualize.
Yeah.
But I'm persistent. I'll keep hammering away at it for sure, and I'll continue to describe resurrection as a present event. Even though, technically, from where we stand right now in this present moment, it hasn't happened yet. But I believe the top drawer is present, just as I believe the bottom drawer is present, and so did Einstein, and so did Jesus and Paul, apparently. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting, right?
It is.
Very.
The back of Dale. Sandra is here. Sandra says it's been good tonight. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandra. Sandra says it's been good tonight. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Are we winding up? Is it time?
Yeah,
Close.
2
Yeah, a
minutes.
couple of minutes. Anything else, y'all? Sheila, you were brave tonight. You talked about you threw in some good stuff tonight.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate.
It's interesting. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
It is.
I remember. Go ahead.
You sometimes it's just one word you say brings us all out of my head. You know, my head pops open and all this stuff comes rushing out, and I don't know how to say it all at once.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. I feel that way all the time. I work really hard to try to take very complex things that are boiling and try to kind of boil it down to where I can say it simply. And it's not an easy thing to do. And the thing that you're struggling with is just articulating it in a way that you can understand for yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's what doing theology is, and that's what John Wesley called the process of sanctification. It's the growing in faith and maturing in faith, perfecting in faith that he believed in, and I do too. That salvation is an ongoing process. And we're all learning together. We're all learning together. Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks for everybody over on live stream. We love y'all. We love everybody over here on Zoom too. It's just great having you here. And if you want to switch from one to the other from time to time or be on both, that's just fine with us. Whatever you want to do, we'll continue to send out the links. Y'all go ahead and share these videos and let people know that they're there, and share the link if you want somebody to join at some point. And it's really Dale's laughing out loud at my comment about it's interesting what you say when you're trying not to say anything bad. And Michael France, thank you for your comments tonight so much. I appreciate them. Yeah, Gene.
I'm just laughing out loud.
Okay. Y'all have a good night. We're gonna be signing out. May the Lord bless you and keep all of you tonight. Have a wonderful evening. My prayers are with you.
Thank you. Gene, I really want to join your Bible study at some point, but it's hard to take a break from work. But I'm going to join you one of these mornings.
Well, come on down. Somebody's got to keep Bert straight.
I'm the one to do it. If anyone's to keep him straight, it's me.
It may be. You may be right there.
Kia, good to
Y'all
see
take
you.
care.
Yeah, you too.
Hey,
All right, take care.
Is Sam there to
Bye-bye,
say hey to
everybody.
Sam? Hey, Sam.
Will do. Bye.